In this video we're going to learn how to reference files, and in the following video we'll learn how to manage those references so that we don't get the program slowing down and too much confusion. This is the point at which we'll really see how the workflow can operate with programs such as Photoshop, and why Illustrator is such a good program for assembling your final panels. Because you don't have to do all your work in Illustrator, but you can reference it in and have it update regularly. I'll explain that in this as we go along. Okay, so you'll see that I've made half of our panel black with our black ground with space down the bottom where I'm going to put a render, a generated render using Maxwell render of my building, and up the top in the I've moved the gradient, the texture that we had in the car park out, and in its place I'm going to put a Photoshop created backing. Okay, so we'll start by going to our folder, so we can just go straight to our folder. There's many ways to do this, but I'm going to go with this method. Select the image that I want to bring in this case it's going to be the nighttime render, and just drag it and drop it onto our canvas. So we can click on the canvas and we're back. Okay, so there's the image. It's a little big at the moment. I'll just zoom out so we can see it. There it is. So I'm going to scale it by going to Object, Transform, Scale, or simply when it's selected in the control bar, clicking on Transform. But we want to scale it down by 20%, which is something we can't do in this bar, so I'm going to go back up to the Object, Transform, Scale. 20%. Hit enter, and there it is. I'll drag it into place. So we're going to apply a few skills we've learnt in previous episodes here. So click on, in the control bar you'll see a few options. Live trace, which you'll learn in the advanced section of this tutorial course. Edit the original, that will open it up in Photoshop. Embed, I'll explain that in 1 second, and mask. I'll click on the mask button, and that enables me to drag the boundaries of the box in without it rescaling. So exactly as I created a mask in the previous clipping mask video tutorial, what this does is it creates a bounding box mask around the exterior of the reference file, and you can use your path tools to change it if you wish, but that will suit me, so I will move it up a little bit, and we'll drag down that path so we can see it a little bit more. Oops. Oh, it's rescaling because the clipping mask isn't selected. So if you want to edit the clipping mask after you've selected off, double click, so we enter, select the path, and then we can drag down. So that's for editing the clipping mask. Okay. Now I'll briefly explain to you what the embed button does and what it really means to reference a file. So having dragged and dropped the image onto the canvas, onto our artboard here, we haven't actually dropped it completely into the file. Illustrator is referencing it and continually checking every time you open the file what this image is, and then dropping it into this spot with this scale and these and the properties that we've assigned within Illustrator. So for example, if I was to go into Photoshop and change this file, which was a JPEG, change the hue or add some more people into it, then save that JPEG again next time I open Illustrator, or if I update within Illustrator using the links palette, which I'll show you in a minute, it'll update. So it enables you to continue working on files without having to commit to a finished product, which is really useful in architecture. So go up to Window and then down to Links, and you can see our reference files. Okay, what you may not be able to see at the moment, but I assure you is a common problem and is revealing in all amateurs when they print their stuff for the first time, is the fact that the black background might not match the background of the JPEG, exactly. So if you want to change the black background, use the eyedropper tool that I showed you before to change the color, or you can use Photoshop to select the true color of the black background and edit the original file. So both ways are tricks, and if you are having problems with that, come and see us in the workshop. Okay, so I'll minimize that links file. I'll show you now what we really want to have a look at, and that's the Photoshop backing for this section here. So I'll go back to my folder and I'll drag and drop a new reference file in. Oh, there it is. I'll click. And just before I do anything, we want to check what layers these are being dropped onto. And you can see all my other layers are locked except for my reference images. That's just which is selected. That's a useful way of ensuring that the artwork will drop straight onto that layer, because depending on where you drop it, whatever smart guides pick it up or snap to the image that you're dropping, it might decide to pop onto another layer, but if they're locked, they won't. So I'm just going to drag this up, and you'll remember if we go to our transparency setting and click multiply, the white will become transparent. There we go. And now I'm going to hold shift to nudge at large increments until it's approximately where I want it to be, and then I will just use the arrow keys to get it into approximately the right spot. And I'll just zoom in a little bit to check that out. And that's thereabouts. Actually, maybe I should move it down a little bit more. Well, we'll say that's good enough. Okay. And I'll click off. So there are our two reference files, and you can see that we have a few problems with this actually. There's a few little bits of the Photoshop file we don't want to be seen, so we can just use our, for example, this person here is completely off the page. I can fix that in Photoshop, or I can use the masking tool. I'll go up and click mask. So I can resize this, but if we go and use our add anchor point, which we've seen a few times now, and add a few points around the outside of the path, oops, there we go. You don't want to miss the anchor point, or it gets miss the path, or it gets a little bit angry. And we use our direct selection tool to go and cut it out. This is the part of the image we want to cut out. You'll see how it disappears because it's outside of the mask. We'll really see it when we get rid of this old man here. There we go. Disappeared. Now I can click off, get my selection tool back, and have a look at the whole panel. And there we go, we've referenced our files in.